Welcome to the halftime huddle. Halfway through the week, it's a funny old time at the moment still. Where it's halfway through, so hopefully we're here to get you through the second half to make the second half your better half over the hump. Um, so today I want to talk a little bit about data. We've probably all heard big data and big data everywhere. Google, Facebook, all these people worrying about sort of gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes, whatever that means in real terms of data. But what about small data? What about data for small businesses? So today I've got a lovely guest to talk to you about data for small businesses. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to, and here we go, playing with the technology, Nicola Askham. So hi, Nicola.
Hi,
Welcome.
Mark. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah. We know each other from a mastermind. We were talking before the show about the mastermind. We've met each other, and I don't think we've actually had the chance in the mastermind to talk to each other. But the mastermind has been a really useful thing. So again, part and parcel of what I do. Do go and have a join a mastermind if you can. But Nicola's here to talk about data governance trainer and coach. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell people what you do and where you come from and etc. a little bit.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, so my name's Nicola, and I've been doing data governance for 18 years now, which is quite scary. It's flown by. So I actually came from a banking background, and I was a project manager. And I got into data by accident because as a result of that project, I realized that as a project team, we'd fixed some data that was clearly wrong. And some people were grateful, others were less because we changed numbers and people couldn't understand what had happened. And it really started my interest in data. And from there on, I kind of, whenever I got the opportunity, I started talking to people about roles and responsibilities around data. So I'd been doing that a couple of years before I even found out there was a name for what I did, and that's called data governance. And let's be honest, it's a really boring name. It sounds awful. People go, ugh. I mean, particularly, I get if you're a small business owner, you'll be going, yeah, that sounds really boring. I don't think I need to worry about that one. And it gets confused with lots of other data things like data security and particularly GDPR and data protection. But data governance is all about understanding what data you have and whether it's good enough for you to use. And that sounds like, I hope really simple and straightforward, but it's amazing how many people don't understand what data they have or they're using it in a different way. And and I think it's fair to say that with all the clients I work with, they tend to be bigger organizations, but nearly all of them without fail wish that they'd thought about their data sooner. So when you asked me to be part of this, I thought, well, this is great. We can get people right at the beginning and tell them how to do some really simple things that can help them make their data better so that as they grow, they won't suffer from some of the other problems that other companies get.
No, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. It's like you say, it's really important. When we first spoke, I also come from a corporate background. I work in IT and data in IT is key. And you're right. So there are so many mistakes and misunderstandings by people not really understanding what they mean by certain data, where the certain data is, how they can get it, what the number is, all that kind of stuff, and you could spend ages sorting it out. And you're very right. I mean, I come in with businesses normally at a stage where they're trying to sort this out, and luckily most of them are at the stage where they're wanting to get their data right from the beginning, and because it's as you said, it's very difficult and expensive to fix a problem after you've found it. And if you can start from the beginning, so thank you very much for coming along. It's brilliant to talk to you. We will talk a little bit. I know you mentioned data protection and GDPR. We will skirt over that a little bit because I know data governance is bigger and more wide coverage than just the protection. But so if you were starting from again, where would you sort of think was the first place for a small business to start thinking about data?
I think you've just summed it up in that question. Actually, is to think about data because most people don't think about data. So I don't know what kind of businesses your mastermind group tend to run, but every business has data, even if it's just a basic list of your customers. And I think the thing you need to start thinking about is perhaps building what, if I was giving you a proper data governance term, I'd say a glossary, but just call it a dictionary or just a list. It's a spreadsheet, and say customer means this. Because I've worked with people who have arguments over what a customer is. Because is it a customer that buys something off you or has one of your services? Do they have to have a physical product? So I have had people where you're called a client if you have a service and a customer if you buy a product.
Oh, I can imagine that's confusing. Yeah.
And other people just go, it doesn't really matter. We can use it interchangeably. But if they could mean something different, get it written down. Because I think while there's just the one of you or a small number of people, you might all understand what you mean by something. But as soon as you get bigger or you outsource work to somebody, then you start having problems because people don't understand the same things as you. So, and at the moment, while you don't have huge volumes of data, writing some definitions down is really easy.
No.
When you have to come back and fix this and you've got hundreds of different types of fields of data around, then you've got to go back and think, well, but what does this really mean? I mean, I have so many horror stories where things have gone wrong because people saw a date field and they thought it was something that it wasn't, and they've done reports to regulatory bodies that were wrong. You really, so it would take no time at all now if every time you start collecting some new data, to start thinking about it, and also start thinking about which of this data is really important and which are you just collecting for context, because you can then start thinking about the quality of your data. So I can tell you from personal experience, the one thing that really, really winds me up is somebody spells my name with an H in the middle of it, meaning the Nicola part, in case anybody's wondering.
I was going to say, I'm thinking, oh no, I put an H in there.
No, Askham does have an H. So that really, really winds me up. And as a business, you can give me the best possible service, but I'm really wound up because it's really simple. I don't have an H in my name. I never gave you an H in my name, and you've just got it wrong. So, really, really basic level, you could say to yourself, right, I know this is how I define a customer, and customer name. Actually, the customer name is really important that we get this right, and we need to put some checks in place to make sure we get it right so that we don't upset people who are anal about how their name is spelled, kind of thing. And you can take it from there. And perhaps none of your other data is really important, but perhaps some of it is. Perhaps you have stocks and you need to know quite accurately what stocks you have. And you don't, if you start employing somebody, you don't want to call something one thing and somebody else calls it something else, and you say, have we got any of this in stock? And they say no, and you go, oh gosh, must do a bulk order. And then when it arrives, you go and look and go, well, we already had some of them. So it's all about, it sounds really basic and understanding, but if you start documenting these in a really simple format, then you stop having those misunderstandings. And at a small business level, yes, the costs aren't as bad as I've seen from people making mistakes with data in larger organizations, but they're still proportionately as costly to you. And they cause you pain, and they could cause you lost customers, poor customer service. So it's really, I just feel that you've got this great opportunity now to start getting your data right with minimum effort.
No, agreed. And I love the idea of having a simple glossary, a simple list of the terms you use for certain pieces of information, like what is a customer, what isn't and just start at the beginning, because it's very easy to start thinking and talking about something, and then midstream change your mind. I mean, I was on a workshop, and hence the term workshop yesterday, or an intensive yesterday, and they were talking about the difference between what's a workshop, what's a boot camp, what's a masterclass, etc. And if you don't know what that is, and you're confused about it internally, then how are you going to be able to explain that to your customer or client, whatever you call them, at the front end? And if you're changing your term back and forth between what it is it a masterclass you're going for, or a workshop you're going for, or a webinar you're going for, then being really clear about it from the beginning helps you to be clear when you're talking to other people, which I think is a great idea. I also loved your idea, and I really thought about it, of assigning some kind of level of importance about the piece of data you want. I mean, I love your idea about the name. I mean, we know instinctively that a business's name is important to the business, or a customer's name is important to the customer, but actually recognizing it and putting it into the codifying it in some way is key. And I think it reminds people to be especially careful about the information that gets stored in that particular piece of data. I love that idea.
Yeah, no, that's very true. As when you were saying about the workshop, you made me think of a mistake that I made. So I'm not perfect. I tell people what to do, but forget to do it myself sometimes. So I outsource as much as I can. I have a VA firm that I use. And the girl who does most of my work has recently changed. And I said to her, I need to do a post this week to publicize all my training courses that are coming up. So can you do an image for me that has, these are the next few events that I'm doing. And when I went back and I looked at the Trello card and the task, and I used the name, both training course and event. So she took me at my word and went for events and created an image, which also had external events I was doing. So some conferences I'm speaking at. And, and actually that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted an image that just had the dates of my training courses. And so you're thinking, and I fell foul of that, and I should know better at making sure. So it's very easy done, but you need to kind of, if you can prevent against those things by thinking about these things in advance, it can make such a difference.
No, absolutely, and you're very right in when you said beforehand that that's not going to bankrupt your business. It's not going to happen, but it is extra time and extra effort and extra confusion, and potentially in the scheme of things, it could have slipped past and gone out.
Yeah, it could have done. And I'm saying I've got the cost of having to pay her to create the image twice because I had to go, no, not like that, and that was my fault.
No, exactly. And I talked about sort of beforehand about comments. Richard has mentioned one of the other things that we talk about data is the relationship between different pieces of data, and that's probably another thing you might need to think about. What is the relationship between you alluded to in some way when you talked about the difference some people put between a client and a customer. And a client and a product, and a client and a customer and a service, and so that's a simple relationship that you might want to codify or document.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that relationship is how you work out the quality or the impact of poor quality. I would absolutely. So that's why it doesn't matter, even if you were a global massive organization and I was starting to work with you, I would tell you to start building your glossary in a spreadsheet anyway, because you can start doing exactly that. You can say, actually, now I've started doing this, what would be really useful is, and in this case, the relationship. So you can just add another column. So, there are expensive tools that will hold your glossary for you, which is, definitely not of interest to the audience here. But even if you had that kind of budget available, I would tell you to start with a spreadsheet, because then you can work out what is it for you that's useful for you to know and understand and capture about your data. And with a spreadsheet, you could have a great idea, and then you could realize 6 months in that you never fill in column F because you just got carried away and excited when you decided to include that. It's a spreadsheet. You can delete it. It doesn't matter.
No, absolutely. I can well believe that you can get to the stage where you think, oh, I want that piece of information. I want to know that about that. I want to know another thing about it. And after, as you go through it, actually trying and working through it, you find out, like you say, column F, which is the date you first used it. Nobody cares about. You'll never need to do it. Never fill it in, and never know. So, I love that idea of starting simple with a like a spreadsheet, and most people have access to some level of spreadsheet. Even if you want to, it's a table on a piece of paper. It's a virtual spreadsheet.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So you talked about data governance. So what else do you mean about data? Well, we've talked about basically collecting what you mean by certain pieces of data.
Yeah, so that's the understanding of it. That's actually, your glossary can become quite useful when you start. So I say data protection and say GDPR is a different area, and you need to be very careful because there's legal connotations. But one of the things that GDPR asks you to do is to document certain things about the personal data that you use. So if you have a data glossary for all of your data that you're starting to build up, that's where you should put your personal data. I wouldn't document your personal data somewhere else just so that you've got it for GDPR, because you want the same thing. It's your customer name. So I would put on my spreadsheet like a little column that says, is this personal data? Yes or no? It could be one column. And if it's yes, then you can have maybe 3 more columns. because what you would want to know to meet the GDPR requirements is what do you use it for? What's its purpose, and where is it located? So from a GDPR point of view, you need to know what systems it's on. So whereas if you're a small business, you might not care the non-personal stuff. You've got your product inventory on a Google sheet. You might not want to put that on the thing. But if it was your customer data and it's on a Google sheet, you need to put that so that you can answer the questions if you ever were asked to for GDPR point of view. So I will say data protection is not the same, but good data governance helps underpin GDPR, and you don't need to have lots of different little bits of paper around the place. You can have one document that is starting to everything. This is everything I know about my data.
And I like the idea. I mean, because we started talking about the idea of collecting a glossary, which is just the terms you use. I think you're saying that the next step after that is to get some kind of indication of where they're used and how they're used. Not
Yes.
just
Yeah,
not just what you mean by a customer. What do you do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're there ready to answer any regulatory questions that you might get asked. But more importantly, as you grow, that information's all there. So, you don't come and work for me, Mark, and then I say, oh, Mark, go and do some analysis for me of all my customers. And you say, great, and you keep bugging me every 5 minutes going, is this all of them? I go, well, no, you haven't gone and found the ones on my CRM system, and you haven't found the ones on this. I can just say, here's a list of all the data, and this is where to go and find it.
Yes, absolutely. And going back to the comments, Richard, talking about virtual assistants, even smaller businesses at some level may need to excuse me, coughing, spluttering, very, very professional. Even small businesses at some level, their first step into outsourcing work would be to work with a VA, and I would imagine it's a brilliant resource to be able to give to your VA. Where all the data is and what data they might want to do for even simple things like collecting the sort of things you do with a VA is collecting your data, doing your paperwork, collecting various pieces of information, which is again data, knowing where it is and where they might store it, and having that resource is a great aid to make your interaction with a VA smooth from the beginning.
Absolutely. And it's all down to everything with data comes down to efficiency. So most people I talk to think of data as a necessary evil doing their job. And I try and turn that around and say, actually, if you think about your data and not think about it as the thing that just makes your life complicated, you can actually plan ahead. And it means that you can not waste time fixing data, answering silly questions about where data might be, or do you mean this or do you mean that? And you can actually get on with what your skill set is. Which is unlikely to be data, So by getting your data right, it actually frees up your time to concentrate on what your business does and do more of that, rather than running around chasing your tail because the data wasn't quite right.
No, absolutely, and you're bang on. I would imagine it's a lot easier for you to be able to say to anyone who comes in to interact with you any way you need to, that you don't have to ask me where the data is. It's in that document over there. So the only piece of information you need to give them is the place where you find about your data, and then they can go find it.
One example when it was a corporate, but one of the teams that I was working with were very resistant to doing data governance. They really didn't want to. They had no choice. But and I worked with them, and I'd been there helping them on and off for a while. And about 6 months in, somebody came to me and said, "I know I was a bit challenging to deal with when you first came and started helping us." And he went, "But we go through quite a lot of junior staff on our team. And we always get fed up because, it interrupts the more senior people, having to keep training them up, tell them where everything is, how to do it. And then they make mistakes because we all use terminology in different ways. And so it was in the insurance sector, but even people who work in different insurance companies all mean different things. So you can come in from a different company and they go, great, you know what you're talking about, but they don't. They use the same terminology, but they don't mean the same." And he suddenly went, "We realize that since you've helped us build this glossary, it's become this huge part of our training. And we all realize that we don't spend so much time training people. Our trainees are perceived to be better because they're not making mistakes. They were, because it's all there as a reference. So it was really painful for them to do, I'll be honest. But, that's why I feel that, your audience has got such a great opportunity to do some really simple, basic things now that won't take a lot of effort, that will leave them in a really good position going forward.
No, absolutely. And as you were saying that, I was thinking it's really key to the simple thing, starting with a glossary, starting with even the simple thing of a name and a description, and add to that, like you said, in a spreadsheet, as and when you need to, as and when you can feel to. But start with that. It seems to be a brilliant way to start, and will pay dividends um, as you go along. As soon as you start to interact, even I would imagine as well, even in your own the way you interact, like you talked about. I know you talked about the situation where you had a VA listing all your events and your internal trainings, but even internally, if you were listening to yourself and wanted to do that yourself and list all the things that of a particular category, all your internal trainings, if you knew where they were and what you meant by them, you could find it and make your life so much easier. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yep. Sorry, I'm just looking at comments there, and I think we're getting some love about the idea of starting simple, which I think is where we are at the moment. Because one of the things about small business is there's so much stuff to do already. Adding another level of complexity on top of it is just sometimes just way too much. So the simple idea, I like that. I love the simple idea of just starting with a basic glossary in whatever spreadsheet format you use, for whether it be Google Sheets through to Excel through to what's it? See, is it Sheets or Pages? I think it is
The Mac.
what sheet? What's it called? The Mac one, the Mac version, etc. Whatever you do, put it in with two columns, name and description, and then work on from there.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, you don't need anything complicated in a small business, but you do start needing to get these basic things documented, because they will just stand you in such good stead going forward.
Yes, and like I said, well, I've had another comment here, and one of the key things I used to find out when I was going to an organization, and again, we're talking about a lot of organizations, is the jargon that they use, which is essentially just another way of describing a thing. And a glossary, in that case, I think, as you were saying, alluding to before, and when you bring in trainees in, having some kind of glossary helps to remove some of the obfuscation or the confusion over the jargon that's used internally. Because no matter where you go, you will use a different term in a slightly different way. Um, and
Yeah, I mean, I've been told, we don't need that. Everybody knows what that means. It's just you're being a stupid consultant and you don't know these things. And then you help them do some reports on data, and then you find out that yes, perhaps half the company did know what something meant, and the other company also thought they knew what it meant, but they meant something different. And you can have terrible mess by people, using the same term but meaning different things. And even when they actually do that in your systems, they put different things in the same field, which means that your data is now so messy it's not useful to you.
no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and you're right. Sort of, while many of the people listening to this are nowhere near at the stage where they're having that kind of level of complexity, I think you're bang on that if you start where you mean to go on, it's so much easier. As they say, it's a lot cheaper to fix the problem at the beginning rather than to fix it when it's broken.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you could come up with a simple rule of, actually the most important thing is our customer data. And and to be fair, GDPR actually asks you to have accurate data as well. So quite apart from, you have a regulatory requirement to have personal data correct. But if you actually say, actually, our customer data is really important for us from a personal service point of view, then you can start focusing in on that and not worrying about perhaps some of the other data. And you can worry about that later. But you can say, how do we know our customer data is correct? Well, anybody that starts coming and working to us, we can say, when a new customer joins, it's really important that we double check when we speak to them how they spell their name, what their postcode is, so that we don't have issues.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and like you say, and again, I think as soon as people start from doing the simple name and description, I think the important next step I think will be how you use it and whether it's whether it's regulatory or not or GDPR or not, which is I think the next key. And like you say, if you start from where you are, start from the beginning, it's a lot simpler. Um, so yeah, no.
Definitely.
So in terms of just a little bit about you, you talked about challenges. What is the biggest challenge you would have? Uh, we're talking about further down the line, but in terms of small businesses, if they can understand what your biggest challenges you face, then maybe we can stop some of the people
Stop
here
it.
is falling into them.
So I think probably the biggest challenge is the culture. So that people don't think that data's their job. So I think if you could, as a small business, if you could bake that in now to understand that whatever it is you do, that your data is key for you doing that well. And if you can bake that into every time, perhaps if you're growing your team, you share that message, you would be in a fantastic place because, as soon as you've got more than 2 or 3 people, you know, and then you suddenly say, oh, by the way, we've just realized data is important. People going, well, we never did it that way before. Why have we got to change? So, if you could start actually just thinking now, and I mean, I'm a data geek. I think about data in everything. And every time I use, I discovered a new website yesterday to order some food. And I'm immediately going to my husband, wow, I love their data and the way they've done this and structured that. And yes, I'm a data geek. I always look at the data that would be behind things. But, you know, I don't expect you to get quite as excited as data as I do. But what you need to think about is, and every time perhaps you do have something goes wrong or a niggle, try and understand if data was behind that, because then you can fix it so it never goes wrong again. So,
Okay.
why did that happen? And quite often, data problems happen because of the culture, not because of people deliberately trying to do the data wrong. It's because we don't think about data as being part of our job. So, trying to think about, so if you're a florist, you're a trainee florist, you've just joined, and you're really excited because you're just a real creative type, and all you want to do is get your hands on those flowers and start practicing. But your boss makes you take orders on the phone, and she hasn't told you how important it is that you get the postcode right. Kind of thing. And now the delivery driver's wasting time trying to find the right house to deliver the flowers, and they get returned, and you have to ring up. And you can see how this, yes, you're a florist. Why would you think about data? But actually, certain bits of data are going to be really, really key. And so you need to get that into your kind of mindset and your culture, because if you get your data right, then you can do what it is that you do right and do it really well.
No, absolutely. And in your example, if you spend a lot of time and energy creating the wonderful bouquet or wonderful arrangement of flowers, and the delivery man can't deliver it because you've got the data wrong, then you've just wasted a whole lot of your time. You've wasted the opportunity of delivering something wonderful to someone. So you're right. Data is key to everyone. I like the idea of the fact that being understanding that it's important from the get go. Which I think is when we mentioned a little bit earlier, the idea of not just putting, and I said start off with just name and description of your piece of data, but the importance of the data, I think, is also a key starting point. And I think that one of the other challenges, and I've seen this in myself, and you see this a lot, way, is once you start, and I've seen this before, once you start collecting data, you sometimes get stuck in collecting all kinds of spurious and weird bits of data because you think it might be important. And you can then easily, I would imagine, if it's not your job, to get overwhelmed with the fact that you're collecting all kinds of data that you're never really going to be bothered about. So understanding what's important and what isn't is probably key from the get-go, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing. So, you know, I think if you were going to introduce a new service or a new product, I would sit down in the same way that I would with a big project with a corporate. I would sit down and say, what data do I need to make this work? Have I got all the information about my customer I already need to offer this service, or do I need to know their shoe size or their eye color, or what is it I need and why? And particularly with personal data, you need to understand the why from a GDPR point of view, which I'm sure you all know anyway. But if you start thinking about it like that, then you'll think, well, I will, then you will only collect the data you need and not get bogged down on volumes of data, because then you'd start getting too much data, as you say, and it's just distracting. And you can't use the good data because you've got too much of the other stuff. So yeah, just get what you need. You can always go back and ask for more in the future if you need to.
No,
But
no,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
get more data. It must be good for analysis and things. But let's just build up to just get what we need first and get it right, and then we can see what else would be useful, because we'll be using the data we have well, and then we can understand, is it worth us having more?
No, absolutely, and I think one of these, sometimes the things, and I see this with small businesses, is they can get overwhelmed with the things they need to do, the things they think they need to do, particularly, I mean, especially in this modern sort of social media ages. They need to do this social media, that marketing, this marketing, that training, that kind of stuff. Collect that data. If you add on more and more sort of complexity and more things they need to do, they just get swamped. So I like the idea of just starting basics with a simple idea, simple glossaries, simple things you need to do, and try and be really key about whether it is useful data or not to you, um, and not bother too much about the stuff that is just that you think isn't useful, because like you say, as you said, you can always go back and collect more data if you need to.
Yeah, because I think customers are, as a society, we're much more data savvy than we ever have been. And I think even the last year of everybody having to do everything online, they've got a lot more used to the fact that they can do more themselves and they're not reliant on, companies doing everything for us. But that also means that your customers are more data savvy. So they will challenge you and say, well, why do you need my date of birth for that? You don't need my date of birth to do that service. Or, so you shouldn't be, you should just be asking for what you need.
No, I agree. Like you say, I think, um, you know, for what it's worth, GDPR and all that kind of data protection push has definitely made people, you're right, more savvy about whether you need certain pieces of data or not on stuff. I mean, I know underneath there are some other regulations that people may or may not know about, in terms of whether you need it for legal reasons or stuff like that. But being able to understand and justify why you need it helps you to understand whether it's useful or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just having a look through some of the comments we've got here. I've got a message about Oline, and she's sort of. I know Oline's been working small business for quite a while, so she's probably got a lot of data floating around. So a lot of it is in your head, and that's the challenge, I think. And I think one of the problems I think that many small businesses will probably face when they start off is it's very much a matter of just getting going and getting some work done. That if you're not careful, then you end up with a lot of it in your head. Um, and if you start simply, then I think you can move some of that away.
Yeah, I mean, and I would sympathise and understand, and I was definitely the same. And it's almost like, you're the worst person is the person who tells you how to do it. Doesn't mean they do it themselves. So yeah, I had too much in my head, and it's taken me quite a while to backtrack and rationalise things. So yeah, do it while you have the chance before it gets too difficult.
No, absolutely. And the other thing I would say as well, especially with my head on whether it's data or nothing, it that I think the motto about when is the best time to plant a tree, it's 20 years ago or now. So you may be 20 years down the line in terms of your business and your data governance journey, and you haven't done anything about it. Don't let that put you off starting right now.
No, actually, I did that in a webinar for somebody last year. They asked me to do it, and they said, "When's the best time to start data governance?" Well, years ago. When's the second best time? Well, today,
Yeah.
really.
No, absolutely, and start with the data in front of you, and then work backwards.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, it's been lovely talking to you. I think sort of one of the things I think is really sort of key that are coming across here is to start small, start simple. The glossary sounds to me like a thing everybody should start with. If they haven't got one, start right now. And like I said, don't let it put you off. If you're 5, 10, 15, 20 years into your small business and you haven't had a glossary, start now. I think Nicola would agree with me.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much. So in the meantime, just a little bit of go ahead. Where can people find more information about you, or follow you, or see if they wanted to contact you?
So so I do have a website which is just nicolaaskham.com. It was very inspiring, and I do have a blog on there. I also have a YouTube channel which has some really short 2 or 3 minute videos on data governance. So if people wanted to just kind of cover off little basics, that's probably a good way to start.
Brilliant, and I'll add some more information in the comments below. And so, thank you very much. I think you. I think one of the things that I felt about sometimes you think it's going to be really hard to get involved in data. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be tough. But I think you've shown us that simple, start simple with a simple little glossary, and work your way up from there. Which is brilliant. And if you and make sure and remember, I think I like your little comment about the fact that making sure data is important to you, and data is something that you should build into your culture from the get go. So I love that. So thank you very much for talking to us. I'd love to speak to you again. And like I said, anybody who is coming to this in the future in the replay, do let us know if there's anything you would like Nicola to talk about and answer, and we can get them through, and maybe get Nicola to come back and talk again. So, but thank you very much. I hope everyone has had a great afternoon. Now that it's the afternoon, we are over the halftime huddle. The hump has gone. We're now on the roll into the end of the weekend. So let's hope that it can be as good for everyone, and the second half be the best half. So on that, I'll say goodbye and speak to you later. Hi, welcome again. Thank you very much for bearing with me and staying right to the end. I know there are a couple of you who do stay to the end to see the credits at the end. I'd welcome your comments about other people we might want to come along and talk to us about sort of things that would be useful for you as a small business. I have loved having my chat with Nicola. It's been really good and really useful, and I love the fact that you could just start something simple, which is brilliant. So please let me know if there's anything you want me to bring in and talk about. And I hope to see you later on. So have a great week, and I will speak to you next week.